The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The Metis Tech Show. So, John, I've always wanted to make my own gravy, as they say in Rhode Island, or tomato sauce. I hear you make a mean sauce. Walk us through it. Walk us through it.
I do. It was my grandmother's recipe, and always fresh from tomatoes. As I have I'm blessed to live up in the mountains of North Georgia right now. So there's any number of farmers markets where I can get all my fresh tomatoes and garlic, and basically it's a couple day long process between peeling and cooking and all the fresh herbs, garlic and salt, pepper. I do something weird that my wife doesn't like, but she never sees it. And I used finely diced carrots to sweeten the sauce a little bit instead of sugar.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
that's what I do.
Yeah, it makes the gravy better.
It does, and it doesn't have that fake sugary taste.
Too often, just the regular granulated sugar so many people put in it, you can taste it.
Yeah, no,
so
that's no good.
Carrots to sweeten it. The mirepoix, of course, fresh onions, celery, and garlic and carrots and all the stuff. And then, it just cooks. And over a course of 2 days, you're changing the salt. You're adding all kinds of any of your extra herbs, your thyme and your rosemary. And the best part is the every 2 hour taste test.
Yeah. Do you use fresh basil?
When I can get it. If I happen to be making a batch in the wintertime, it's out of the little jar. But there's plenty of farms around where I'm at. I can get most of the herbs fresh here. It just makes it taste better.
Yeah, I agree.
And then when you finally get it over I never make my own pasta, so it's always the boxed pasta, but it makes boxed pasta taste better.
Nice. So what kind of tomatoes are you using? Are you starting with? Like, is there a certain type or size or ripeness or whatever?
It depends on what's really in season and available, because I like to go to the farmers markets to get them. So I've never used the heirloom tomatoes, the ones that are all big and knobby and come in the different colors. Just
okay.
They scare me a bit, and I'm not sure how to peel them. But regular beefsteak tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, any tomato that I can get my hand on that's fresh, or even just a basket full of a bunch of different ones.
So are you cooking these down so that the skin peels off after? Do you have to do any peeling of these tomatoes?
Oh yeah, peeling tomatoes. It's fun. You put a little nick in the skin, you boil them for a couple of minutes, and then throw them in some cold water, and then the skin just peels right off.
Oh, really? All right.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad.
Did you say it takes 2 days?
Well, I let it take 2 days because I'll let it sit. I've discovered I used to cook it in a pot on the stove, and I'd start early in the morning, and usually by dinner time it's ready. But I find leaving it in the crock pot for a couple of days, it really just does something to it when every flavor in there is completely combined. That's my invention. My grandmother would have probably rolled over in her grave if she heard me doing it.
But that's actually a good method, because when I make chili, I make it in a pot, and then I'll refrigerate it, and then I'll heat it in the crock pot, because all those flavors then mix in together. If you just made it on a stovetop, if you made it on a stovetop and then jarred it and everything, it's not going to taste the same later. So doing it in a crock, I think it's a good idea. I might have to try that, because all those flavors, like you said, you taste it every so often, and by the end of those 2 days, you're going to have all the flavors all just intermingling and combining, and what's the word I'm looking for? complementing each other, and it just sounds really good. I have to make a sauce now.
So, what do you do with the sauce after? Are you jarring all this, putting masking tape on them, bring them into a dark basement somewhere? Or,
No, usually as soon as it's done, it gets eaten. Most of it, whatever's left, Tupperware containers, painter's tape with the date, and chuck it in the freezer.
Interesting. Yeah, my wife had to go through a Serve Safe course on food handling and everything else. I didn't know this, but if you put hot tomato sauce in the fridge,
Yeah, it's no good.
it can actually make you sick.
Yep.
Yeah, it turns into turn it to poison.
You have to let it cool. I was telling
what?
that to my wife. I got to let it cool off and get to room temperature before you can refrigerate it.
Awesome.
Well, you should never put anything hot into plastic anyway.
That's true.
And that's what most people use these days. So yeah, it's so you turn the crock pot off next morning, throw it in buckets, freeze it, wash the crock pot, and wife's happy.
Nice.
Well,
Now,
that's a lie. We know that's not true. and if it is true, it's not going to last very long.
Now, do you have designated Tupperwares for the tomato sauce, seeing as it's going to stain them red anyway?
the orange ones.
Yeah, the orange one. Actually, what I have found is some of the Rubbermaid brand ones. I don't know if we can shout out a brand here.
Sure.
After the sauce is removed and reheated and reused, I immediately throw the bucket in the sink with a dab of palm olive and fill it up with water and let it sit for an hour. And I've never had any of my plastic keep orange on it.
Wow.
My hands are soaking in that right now. For those you have to remember that commercial.
Yes. Yeah, that's
I do.
pre-Bryn times.
Yeah, Bryn's like, what the heck did he say?
So what kind of meat are you throwing in the sauce? Any kind of meat? Pork bones or anything like that?
If meat goes in it, again, I'm a little spoiled. Across the street, actually, I'm looking out my window at a herd of cattle. Nice. So there's a place right up the street with a butcher shop, and it's pretty much same day.
Wow.
So fresh ground beef, sometimes local made sausage. There's a few pig farms up here, and most of the time it's ground beef.
Awesome. All right. So what's your go-to pasta? Spaghetti, rigatoni, bow tie,
elbow macaroni.
Elbow.
I am
macaroni.
an elbow fiend.
Wow.
Nice.
It's the universal pasta: mac and cheese, spaghetti sauce on elbow macaroni,
American chop suey.
chop suey.
American chop suey. Yep, it's the universal pasta for anything.
I can live with that.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Metis Tech Show, everybody. We have an awesome episode for you guys, and we're going to talk about controls platform. And correct me if I say something wrong. Niagara. John, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. My name is John. Obviously here. I am the software manager for applied projects here at Metis. Basically what that means is if it needs to be programmed to do something other than what the factory has set it to do or integrated with third-party equipment, that is my job.
So customization.
Customization, specialty projects, things that may only be requested in our North American market. We have, of course, different codes and requirements than many other places in the world. And so sometimes special applications have to be developed, and that's where I fit.
Awesome. We got Ed Blair back on the show. Ed, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do. Tell everybody what you do at Metis.
Hi, I am Ed Blair. I'm with the Applied Projects Group. I'm the sales engineering manager. So it's my job to make promises that John has to keep.
And Ed's been on the show before. He's actually the reason why I have a Weber slate griddle. Ed, thank you so much for that.
Weber
I used it again
slate.
last night. Yeah.
And Ed had no input on the sauce. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, no, he kept
no
his
input.
mouth. So I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like tomatoes.
marveling at the use of the word mirepoix in an HVAC
Right?
podcast.
No, it's great. I got it.
This is going to be the second week in a row somebody's throwing out a word out there. Nobody knows what it means. Anyway.
We also got Paul Shaves,
Hey, everyone.
Bryn Raptor,
Hello.
and myself, Steve Pimentel. Now, from what I remember of Niagara, I did some work for TJX stores way back in the day, and those are all the TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Bob stores, all of that, and they used a Niagara platform, and basically that was for energy management of the stores. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's basically, is that all it does is energy management, or does it do much more than that?
It does anything. It's the Swiss Army knife of building management systems. It can be used to integrate with anything third party, not just BACnet or Modbus or LAN. Many companies over the history of the product, like Carrier, have made drivers so you could connect the Carrier Comfort Network to the Niagara platform. Andover had 2 drivers, specifically one for the 256 platform and one for their Infinity platform, that would allow the Niagara appliance to communicate just as if it were an Andover device. Trane has done the same thing with their COM4 and COM5. So it's literally a Swiss Army knife. It's got graphic capabilities, programming capabilities, all kinds of integration, building to building. You can have remote campuses that all report back via the internet to a central supervisory station. It really is very expandable, like the Lego building block of BMS systems.
We actually use Niagara to do diamond controls for Metis. So when we get hired to do a BMS system, Niagara is the platform that we build all of that in.
Excellent. Yeah, because from what I remember, it was one office in the whole country, actually right down the street from where Paul and I are right now. It's in Framingham, and they would monitor all of the TJX stores through Niagara across the country. The systems were set for 68 in cooling. I'm sorry, 74 in cooling, 68 in heat. And the managers, it didn't matter who you were in that store, you had no control over setting the temperatures. And they get so mad at me. And I'm like, listen, they're on an energy management system. And it was just a box that sat in the back of the store. And usually energy management company would call me up and say, hey, we lost communication with such and such a store. Can you go back there and check out what's going on? And usually I just flip a breaker, reset the panel, and everything was talking again. But I found it hilarious because they were like, you have to turn the temperature down in this store. And it's like, nope, can't do anything. It's out of my control.
So you guys are going to have to forgive me on this one because I feel really dumb because I'm not a controls guy. I didn't do a whole lot of controls when I was in a van. But is this, and I think I know the answer, but let's just assume I know the answer. I'm just asking this for everybody else who doesn't know. So let's go with that. Yeah. Is this a hardware or software or both?
It is both. The core of it is a software. It is a Java-based program. It can be run on a computer, or you can purchase what's called a JACE, which is a small box that can go on a wall and a panel, and it will run the same program, not as well as a computer, but for small applications. There are a few companies out there that are creating what we call like a programmable field controller that runs the Niagara platform. So it's like a microcosm of the Niagara software for programming air handlers, built up air handlers, chiller plants. So it can be both. But due to its open source nature, with a little bit of licensing and agreements with the owner of the core software, you could make pretty much anything you want with it.
And
So
what's the difference? I'm sorry, Ed, did you have something to add?
I was going to say that lots of different companies across the country are using Niagara as their controls platform. And there's a bunch of distributions. So you can have Vicon, you can have Honeywell, you can have Siemens, you can have Carrier, Schneider Electric. And so one of the things that we really want to talk about is how all of those different people who aren't doing Diamond Controls or aren't doing Tracer SC Plus now have an option to get the City Multi equipment directly into their Niagara station. So the controls that they're doing every day for their customers, instead of having to do the BACnet license, now we can do the City Multi Niagara driver and get that equipment directly into their station.
Oh, you actually just stole my question. I was going to ask you about the BACnet and the difference.
So what are the parts and pieces? What do I get when I order a license?
Well, when you order the license, the primary part that you get is the jar files, the module files. And these files are the core building blocks of the Niagara software. So by itself, it runs, it looks nice, but without a key to unlock the potential for the different applications, you need these modules. And so you'll get the module. It allows the Niagara platform to operate with the driver. It comes with, there's three pieces to that, actually. You get your operating module, you get your workbench module, which gives you the user interface for using the driver, and then there's a documents module, which doesn't do anything but gives you something to read that will put you to sleep at night if you're having trouble. Along with that, what we have done by request as we were rolling this out and getting opinions from everyone is there's a small folder of images and animated GIFs that you can use for creating your graphics. So little images of wall hung or ceiling hung units, the multi-position air handler, and some of them are animated if you choose to use them. So it will show the coil lighting up when it goes into the active cooling mode, or the fans turning. And then you'll get your license form. So that is what you'll use to let us know that you have purchased your product, and provide a few bits of information so we can give you your key.
Now, is this something that you would use instead of a central controller, or in concert with?
The central controller is required.
Okay.
So gotcha. As with all drivers for Niagara, they have to communicate with a device or a set of devices. And in our case, the central controller is the device that the Niagara appliance will speak to get the information.
The biggest difference is that instead of ordering a BACnet license, you don't have to order that anymore. What you're doing is you're licensing your Niagara station for a connection to a number of central controllers. And so what that does is it unlocks a huge amount of data from the system that you can't get out of the BACnet license.
So is there a limit to how many devices I can communicate with?
Yes, but not from the perspective of indoor units or outdoor units. The only device you speak to is the central controller, which passes through the information for the rest of the system. So as far as the limits, what we do is we license the Niagara driver per central controller. So your license is, so if you license one, your limit will be one. But that does not mean you can't license as many as you have present in your building. So the limits at that point are down to the software. If you're using the PC version of Niagara, as long as you have a robust network, I have seen as many as 25 or 30 central controllers communicate to a Niagara appliance, and with a little bit of fine tuning with your communications and rates of request for information, it operates fine. For the Jace appliance, most of those are restricted. I don't like to put more than 2 or 3. The hardware on those is just not as robust as a PC. That's where the limits come in, is not in the licensing. You can purchase a license for pretty much an unlimited number. It comes down to your hardware for your limits at that point.
Now, you brought back memories with the word Jace. So the Jace is actually the module that I was talking about that sits on the wall. So would a contractor need that to work in conjunction with the central controller?
The Jace or a PC.
Okay.
That's the beauty of Niagara. The core platform itself can run on either.
The Jace is a lightweight appliance that serves like a computer. And if you have a larger campus, like a college campus, or we have some commercial customers who have multiple buildings in a city, they use a hardware or actually a Windows server. But the station is the program that's running on that either Jace or the PC. And the license goes into that station.
Now, is that typically a dedicated PC just to control the HVAC equipment?
We prefer if those remain dedicated for the BMS, not because of software conflicts, though. What tends to happen is when you're running the Niagara platform on a PC, that platform is only running while the PC is on and in good condition. We've had several customers who have had no problem running a secondary system for lighting control in the same PC. They're compatible. The issue gets to be when people use it as a regular workstation for punching time clocks or browsing the internet or that age-old free time killer for Facebook. Those tend to cause issues with the PC, especially if you were to get yourself a virus. So though not technically required to be only for the BMS, that is the direction we usually steer our customers in.
All right. And what can I see? So I have that PC, and Steve brings up a good point. I'm at a corporate headquarters, or a university campus. I'm in one building. I can see all the buildings. But what information can I get? Can I simply just get the statuses or points, or am I getting more? Can I have maintenance tool? What are some of the things that I can see?
That depends on how much you want to put into it. With the Niagara system, it's pretty much, like I said, a Lego building blocks. You add what you want. So with our specific driver, you have the ability to run multiple discoveries. So you can discover your connected indoor and outdoor units. And then once you have those, you can discover the points from each. And so if it's an available point, you can add that to your station. You can see whether or not the fans are on. You can determine vane direction. And you can even see maintenance tool data. Now, the number of maintenance tool points in the indoor units is pretty limited, but the outdoor units, that's where maintenance tool points shine. They've got so many, and there's so many things you can do with it. You can check the status of the mode the outdoor unit is in, or see roughly what kind of electrical power it's using, or check the position of various service valves and the temperature of the thermistor sitting behind the inverter for the compressor, things like that you normally can't see anywhere else, or unless you go to the site to plug in your maintenance tool adapter.
Wow.
Now let's say I'm a contractor and I'm getting ready to install, let's say, a Jace with a central controller. What does he need? Does he need a controls integrator there? So let's say he's not control savvy. Does he need somebody to set that all up for him?
Generally, anyone setting up the Jace appliance to use this is going to be Niagara certified.
Oh, really?
When I was a field technician driving a truck, I was also Niagara certified. It's not a complicated system. And the beautiful part of Niagara is a lot of the work can be pre-done by an integrator at your office. And with minimal effort, a lot of the field technicians could commission or mount a pre-commissioned Jace. And then it's just a matter of copying and pasting a file. Once that file is uploaded, the on-site technician can run through the points, do some verification. For instance, making sure if you it sets at the wall controller, then you know you're communicated. So you don't necessarily have to be tech savvy. If you have someone in your office who can preset everything, then it's just plug and play.
Now, what about the wiring and connections from the Jace to the centralized controller? Is it MNet? Is it a LAN cable?
It is a Cat5 LAN cable. It connects to the same network as the central controller, and that's technically the only wiring required to use Niagara. And power, of course, but usually that's a wall plug.
Now, is that, I'm talking AE200, but is that LAN port 2 for BMS or LAN port 1?
Technically, 1. Usually 1 is attached to the building network so that the ICCW can be accessed. You can use that same jack. It does not interfere with ICCW or any of the other functions. I've actually done some testing, though, and the LAN 2 port, which you have to connect to for your licensed backnet, can also be used for the Niagara appliance if you set the IP to match if you want it on a separate network. So you're not technically locked into LAN 1. LAN 1 is usually the one that's most commonly used, though.
Okay.
Now, is this just for system monitoring, or can you actually create set points through Niagara?
You can do full control. You have everything from set point control. You can shut the units down if you need to using the drive command. You can set your vane directions, your fan speeds. You cannot command outdoor units. We get a lot of requests for that, and that's just not anything possible. Usually it's from folks who are just getting to understand how our equipment works.
Right. Well, it makes sense because the command goes to the indoor unit anyway, so we're not commanding the outdoor unit.
We're not. So with any command.
One of the things that you do get with the Niagara license is you get more points. So you can actually command the indoor unit contact points. So we've talked about free contacts before.
Yeah.
If you set SW19 and 110 on the indoor units to on, it breaks the logic of the contacts. So CN51, CN52, et cetera. And using the Niagara license, the City Multi Niagara license, you now have programmable I/O where the logic lives in the station. And then you can actually turn things on or off and use your indoor unit as your I/O. So if you've got an exhaust fan, you might have a program in the station looking at occupancy for the building or scheduled occupancy, and then you can turn on your exhaust fan and your parking lot lights or your isolation dampers. And when John mentioned earlier, making the equipment do more than what it does out of the box, this is where you're writing those sequences in the Niagara station, and you're controlling your third-party equipment and the City Multi equipment using that one source of contact. So the driver is that connection that opens all of these other things up.
Yep. It provides a way to, like I've mentioned earlier, integrate not only third-party equipment, but the City Multi equipment. For example, here's one that everyone will understand. We've had several jobs where they wanted to do some type of humidity control, and our devices aren't necessarily perfect for humidity control. We have a dry mode, but a lot of times if you want to do real good humidity control, you need an electric heat or some type of heat downstream. So with the City Multi Niagara driver, you could have a programmable field controller that is controlling a duct heater. And you can use your logic in the Niagara station to drive set point variances and modes in your indoor unit and trigger through the same logic your electric heat so that you can have some reheat and do some different humidity type controls, or one of the more common things we've been looking at lately is demand response. So you can use your Niagara platform to program simple or complicated demand response systems to increase or decrease your set points and limit your electrical consumption with commands from power utilities and whatnot. Those are the extra things that you don't get out of your city multi-box that you can do with Niagara.
So what my question was, the Niagara platform, are there any sensors that are just for the Niagara, like humidity sensors? Will a contractor need additional sensors other than what's on our equipment?
It depends on what you're trying to do extra. If you're adding any type of control that needs a sensor that we don't already have, you will need to add that. That's where the programmable field controllers like a Distech controller or a Honeywell controller come in. And because they natively speak with Niagara, it's seamless to program them together to operate with the city multi-equipment.
Okay, so I just want to be clear here. So what we're talking about is this Niagara driver that we now offer. So instead, or as an option to BACnet, which gives me limited data, I now have this driver that I get a license for this station, and I can talk to one or multiple systems or buildings or whatever, and I grab all this data because BACnet gives me limited data. But now, as you said, I can see indoor units, outdoor units, and a bunch of other things. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So BACnet is comfort cooling points and error codes. And with the Niagara license, the City Multi-Niagara license, now you get all of the points out of the equipment. So instead of just seeing indoor conditions at the indoor unit, you also get all of the maintenance tool data points out of the central controller. You get all of the maintenance tool data points out of the branch controllers. So if you have an on-site engineer with access to the BMS, now they can look at their BMS and see, something's not right. I've got hot gas going where it shouldn't. I'm going to go check out that four-way valve because I've got all the data at my fingertips, which I wouldn't have available to me just with the BACnet license.
Wow, that's actually pretty cool.
So essentially, typically we would need a separate BACnet license to integrate our central controller with that Niagara platform, whereas this driver allows us to integrate without that license. We're actually just licensing those central controllers.
Exactly right.
Yep.
All right, so let's get to the meat and potatoes now. So at what point is somebody going to make a decision that I want or I need this Niagara driver? Like, where in the process?
So if you have a system that is going to be a Niagara system, so it's not a Tracer SC system, it's not a Diamond Controls, but there's Niagara, this is an excellent option when compared to BACnet.
Okay.
So if you're doing proprietary Johnson controls, it's not going to work for that. We have other products that'll get you the data, but the Niagara license is kind of a no-brainer if you have a Niagara station as your BMS.
Okay. And then I order this as part of my system, my installation. I'm putting in several city multi pieces of equipment in a building or a couple of buildings or a campus or whatever. What am I getting when I order? What box do I unpack or what software do I open up? Let's go through that.
So the license form is very similar to the way that you would already license your central controller. The difference is that instead of, the central controller serial number, we get something called the host ID out of your Niagara station. And so we generate a key using that and then return that back to you. But we're basically licensing the other end of the connection. So instead of going into the central controller, the license information goes into the Niagara station, but the effect is the same.
And you mentioned there's a Niagara certified contractor that would be doing the installation?
Yeah. So this is a product that is explicitly geared towards our customers who are doing Niagara BMS work. So if you're not doing Niagara BMS work, go back and check out the episode with Reverse Sear. It's really going to change the way that you make your steaks. But if you are a contractor who is doing Niagara work, or you have got customers with Niagara building management systems, this is something that will absolutely change the way that you get the data out of your equipment.
So can I ask a question? Because there's probably sites out there currently that have Niagara set up for their building management, and they have VRF there, and they have their central controller pulled into the Niagara through BACnet. Is this something that they could retro and switch over to this driver and start driving operation that way, or monitoring things that way?
Absolutely. I don't know that it's an automatic, I've got to do it if I've already got BACnet, but if I've got a very large system and I've got a professional maintenance staff that could make use of this data, then absolutely it's something that you could look at adding, because you add this, and I'll leave the technical side of this to John, but you add this to your Niagara station. It's just a driver. You drop it in just like any other Niagara driver, whether it's security cameras or access controls. It's the same sort of software addition to your system.
We actually have a customer site where they're utilizing both. They began with the BACnet license, and so they have the indoor unit comfort control going through that. As they started to expand the building and add a few other things, they liked the opportunity to have maintenance tool points. So they already had licensed BACnet and were pulling BACnet points into their Niagara station. So they added our driver, and instead of undoing all that other work and erasing it and rebuilding their station, they left that BACnet connection as is and just used the driver to discover the additional information that they wanted. Smart ME, wall controls, maintenance tool points, and they were able to do some enhanced logic and predictive maintenance using our driver in addition to licensed BACnet. So they're exclusive to each other. It's not one or the other if you have a building where you're already using licensed BACnet. It also could allow you, if you're expanding your campuses, you could have a couple on licensed BACnet and the new ones on the driver, and there's not going to be a conflict. So you don't have to, and you can use them in conjunction with each other if you're already utilizing licensed BACnet.
Now, you were talking about utilizing things like electric heaters for reheat when you're controlling humidity. I know our ME controllers have the ability, they have a humidistat in them. Are we able to look into data like that exists on that smart ME as a point and use it to drive third-party equipment?
We can. As a matter of fact, one of the most curious things I ever thought about our smart ME is that it had a humidity value, but it didn't use it for anything. It was informational
Right.
only.
Yeah.
Utilizing the City Multi Niagara driver, you have access to that data point. So you can use it to drive third-party equipment. As Ed has pointed out before, you could drive a BACnet humidifier that is not on your central controller because it can't be. Right. But if you notice low humidity with the Smart ME humidity sensor, you could activate a BACnet humidifier. Or if you've got high humidity, you can adjust your indoor unit's output and then run that colder, drier air past a reheat coil operated by either a BACnet relay connected to Niagara or a programmable field controller.
That's crazy.
So it allows you to do that. You can now use the Smart ME humidity value to do functional work.
The very limited commercial work that I did, if there was, a PC set up where I could look at values in the system, but then also be able to do things like that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Just made the Smart ME smarter.
The Niagara driver makes the Smart ME smarter.
What are some of the things we have to watch out for? What are some of the gotchas that a contractor needs to be aware of when he's? Because it's going to be an integrator or a controls guy doing this, right? If he's new to City Multi, what are some of the gotchas?
The biggest one that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around is the fact that our system is a last command wins type of system, meaning there is no priority. If someone wants to change the temperature at a wall controller, then walk over to the AE200 touchscreen and change it there. It allows these changes. If you want to change it then in ICCW, and it doesn't tell you who changed it last. So a lot of people operating the Niagara system are used to the priority system, where if they override a point, they expect no one else to be able to change it unless they go back to the original interface. That's not the case with the City Multi-Driver. If you set at the highest priority, fire and emergency, priority 1, this unit needs to be off, and it will shut the unit off. But if someone wanders over to the wall controller and pushes the on button, that unit will turn on. So these are things you need to keep in mind. That's why you need to not only utilize, if you're relying heavily on the Niagara priority system, you need to also utilize, which you can through the driver, the prohibit functions for the wall controllers. Now, it won't help you with ICCW or the central controller. You'll have to limit with login credentials, that type of access. But if you're used to the priority system, if you combine that with the prohibit functions, which you can use through the driver, then you can limit your headaches due to our last command wins policy. That's the biggest gotcha that I've seen so far with integrators, even with licensed BACnet.
Yeah, I like to say that the priority stops at the Jace.
Yes.
Now, I just saw you provided some notes that this can be used for having VRF as a second stage.
Yeah, that's one of our more popular functions when we're doing diamond controls in the, especially the Northeast, where a building may have steam heat or radiators or radiant floor heat. If you utilize the correct points that you get with the Niagara driver that you don't get with the regular BACnet license, you can actually use another heat source as your primary heating and allow the indoor units built-in logic, which would engage a secondary heat, to keep the VRF off until it can't meet set point, and then it will allow the VRF to run.
Yeah, we're just going to ask. It works off like a droop point or something to kick on our heat pumps.
Well, we have and I don't want to get super, super technical, but we have a value called the max save value in the software. And when you set that to 0, the thermal on capability of that unit goes to 0. So what you're essentially doing is you're detecting the mode for heat, you're setting that to 0, and then you're either utilizing free contacts or your other Niagara logic to engage your other heat source that is not VRF. And then the brilliant part is, since our VRF already has a function for bringing on a second stage of heat, should you have installed it, we have a software value we can read for that, which would then reverse the max save value back to allow VRF to run. And you can do it all with software if you use the free output sections that we have available.
So in this space, the customer might just see a simple MA with a mode and set point, and it's completely invisible to the occupant that there's a control system pinching off that LEV and letting that 2-position valve open up to the wall radiator. They're still controlling set point based on the wall controller, and it's that driver that allows that intelligent connection between the Niagara and the City Multi to make that happen.
Yeah, that was the follow-up question is, so we're still looking at like the wall controller's internal temperature sensor in order to stage that radiator or whatever it is. Wow.
You're looking at
Pretty
cool.
You're looking at and the set point. So since you have access to that variable as well, you can do it 100% with those values. And as Ed pointed out, the end user has no idea.
Holy crap.
And the driver also opens up options for a third-party equipment. So every indoor unit has 4 digital inputs and 3 digital outputs. And so with the driver connection, we can now use all of those points as programmable I/O. So if I've got isolation dampers, if I've got lights, if I've got exhaust fans, now I can connect anything that's a start-stop with a relay to the nearest indoor unit in the entire building and use that Niagara connection. Again, not available through BACnet, but the Niagara connection allows me to turn that equipment on and off throughout the entire building without having to pull a whole nother BACnet trunk, without having to hang a third-party controller, set the ladder up, pop more ceiling tiles. Now I can do all of that with programming and a PAC 715 AD wired harness.
Wow.
And this is why when I mentioned the DIDO board, you said no. We're using the free free contacts.
Wow.
Yep.
So I got a question for you.
Yep.
There's something else that BACnet can't do, and that's Y-series changeover. So an R2, for those who don't know, simultaneous heating and cooling. I can have some zones in heating and some zones in cooling. But a Y-series, it's all or nothing. Everything has to be in the same mode. And we get this question a lot from contractors. How can I get it to change over based on whatever? We can schedule it, but here we are when we're recording this. It's late October, and it's like in the 70s outside. Mm-hmm. So if I switched over October 1st to heating, well. But so how is this going to help me with the Y-series and changeover? How can I configure that, and what are my options?
So it's Y-series changeover is somewhat complicated, but utilizing some logic, what we have been able to do on our own is calculate the necessary load. So if you're looking at the set point deviations for all of your indoor units, it is very easy using the Niagara platform to calculate which mode has the greatest demand. So instead of having to rely on a schedule like October 1st of every year, we just switch everybody to heat, which right now wouldn't work. And April 1st, we switch everybody to cool, which doesn't work. What you can do is create some intelligent logic that will move the mode based on the greatest need. So even in December, if 3/4 of your units are asking for cooling because we're having one of these strange warm winters, it will push the entire system into cooling mode for your greatest demand. So how granular you wish to get is up to you. But what we've found is that is functioning a lot better than just straight up scheduling. So utilizing many of the points and all of your information gathering from your outdoor unit and looking at different conditions in the building, you can use the driver to create a demand-based switch for your heat or cool modes on your Y-series.
So I just have one question that I want to ask, because we kind of touched on it a little bit, being able to look at like maintenance tool data or at least status of certain components in the system. So you have to, through the driver, you would have to request which things you want to look at. So like if I wanted to look at an LEV position, is that something that I would have to specifically put in a point for, or how does that work?
The discovery process with our driver works the same as all the other Niagara drivers. There's a discover button, and it will go out and request what is available for me to add.
Okay.
And you'll get a long list. Now, that doesn't immediately add it to your station, but what it does allow you to do is scroll through the list and see which ones are available for your unit. Now, this is only for maintenance tool.
Right.
For the indoor units, there's a set number of values that you can pick and choose from. It doesn't vary. But for maintenance tool, it will ask what's available. And you'll just pick and choose the ones that are most helpful for you.
Okay.
And then it's just a simple matter of clicking the add button, giving it a name if you don't like, LEV5 or SV2, this really is the blah, 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 blah. You can give it an intelligent name, and then it's in your system forever. Cool. Until you delete it.
So typically, like on a branch controller or maybe an outdoor unit, how many points will you typically add for something like that?
It depends on, like I said, what you want to look at. So with the branch controller, what is really cool is you get all 3 service valve values. for each port. So if you only have 4 connected, you just grab the 12 service valve. So you get A, 1, 2, and 3, B, 1, 2, and 3, C, 1, 2, and 3, and set up a little graphic or logic to tell you, oh, look, this port's in heater cool. But you also get the error codes. You can get for the branch controller, what you can get is a value that will tell you, because a lot of times you'll look at a branch controller and want to know why it's doing X, Y, or Z, and there's a value that will tell you what the current primary mode for your outdoor unit is being reported as. Okay. So it can help you there too. So it really depends on what you're trying to do, but there's a lot available even in the branch controllers.
Wow.
All right, so what else do we need to know? We've covered quite a bit. You've managed to confuse me, because again, I don't have that controls background. I'm hoping the folks out there with more controls history are better off than I am, just to be honest with you. But what else do I need to know? What haven't we talked about yet?
I guess the last thing I would point out is that the driver isn't where you do the programming. Programming happens in the station, right? So you have to have an intelligent programmer who wants to make use of these points, who now has the freedom to connect these different things they were never able to connect before. So the driver is just a connection, but it opens up the opportunity to do all these programming things that we were talking about. So the humidity control, I couldn't do that before, but now using the access to the points, I can write programming in my Niagara station and connect to those points with the driver.
Right. And
does that clarify anything, or to make it?
No,
I making?
For me, I understood it. So if I understand it, I'm thinking 80% of our audience does too. So I think we're good. And so what's the next step? If somebody's listening to you guys or to us right now and they say, hey, I want to know more about this, who at the business unit or who in Swanee, who are they going to call? Who are they going to get more information from? Is it their distributor? Is it us? Where do they start?
So I would talk to your city multi-rep, whether that's the Metis commercial salesperson, whether that's your trained Douglas salesperson. You can find your answers there. You can also reach out to us at appliedsales@hvac.mea.com. And I have a whole team of people whose only job is to answer technical questions and how to do things with controls. So we're very much like the Maytag repairman. So please give us more to do. I may leave that part out.
Excellent. Ed, is there anything on my link drive as far as Niagara information?
I think we've got the submittal up now.
Oh, cool.
Excellent. Yeah, so mylinkdrive.com.
Are there any app notes that we need to know about?
App notes are coming, but yeah, the part number is LIC N4driver-01.
Okay.
Which has the driver guide, the submittal that has a list of all the group objects, indoor units, SmartME, AI, PO. So there's a huge list of stuff on that submittal that you can see that you couldn't see beforehand.
Now, what you won't see on that submittal, and this has been a question we've had, and what you just need to know is, due to the maintenance tools being different for every outdoor unit, we're not listing every possible maintenance tool point. So what you won't see on the submittal are the maintenance tool points, but you do get them. That is just one of those dynamically populated lists that it would take hundreds of pages to list out every available.
Good to know.
Makes sense.
Because that's
Yeah, if it's in the central controller, we get it. And if you've ever looked at the back of the help PDF for the maintenance tool software, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. There's
200 pages.
Yeah.
The e-chiller data also comes through. So when e-chiller comes to North America, adding this to your Niagara station gives you access to an ungodly amount of data out of the e-chiller. It's ridiculous. It's like looking at the e-chiller with a microscope. And so any contractor who's going to be involved in chiller plant optimization it's something I don't know how you do it without it.
No, yeah, because the e-chiller right now is in our international market, which we support as a company, and I would imagine it's coming to North America or the U.S. at some point. So we'll wait on that, and this will probably be a good thing to go along with it.
Yeah, Brandon, we're going to have to bring this into the training room, play with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Mess around with it.
The last thing that I want to say is that, there are so many contractors who are already doing Niagara that were never going to buy Diamond Controls or never SE Plus. And so this driver is how they do their own version of Diamond Controls.
Right.
So rather than having to pay $20,000 to get us to do something, they can now do it for $2,000.
Mm.
No, that's enticing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're already
It's a decent
comfortable with it,
discount.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Mm-hmm.
well, that's good.
Anyway, sorry to be confusing and technical.
That's okay. we're speaking for myself. I won't speak for Brent and Steve, but I confuse very easily.
We call it the tech show, but you can't get too techie on us.
Yeah. No.
We want to talk pasta sauce.
Yeah. Besides, you guys
That's right.
You guys are what we consider controls geeks. We're just HVAC guys.
I could talk controls for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
That's what we're going to do when we hang up with you guys.
There you go. So if you like elbows, have you ever tried cavatappi, which is basically like two elbows glued together?
I think I have seen those. No, I haven't. I saw a really fancy pasta on one of those cooking shows that was like half elbow, half shell.
Huh,
So it was almost like a mini shell that had an elbow poking out of one part of it. And I was like, that would hold so much sauce.
It's the perfect noodle.
Whatever happened to just linguine and rigatoni?
It keeps getting better.
Now, John, have you made pizza sauce at all, or you just use the same sauce?
Yeah, why do the extra effort? I've got some frozen red gravy. I might as well just use that on my pizza.
Yeah, that's
If you're gonna if you're gonna make a spaghetti sauce or gravy, as my Italian friends call it, you should be able to use that on anything. It's good for pizza. It's good for pasta.
Yeah.
It's good for whatever any red sauce.
So I got pizza sauce from the supermarket, little jars of pizza sauce to make my own pizza. You know what it tasted like?
Tomato sauce.
Tomato sauce, yeah.
Yeah, because you know what they do?
I actually would rather use spaghetti sauce for pizza.
Right.
The pizza sauce is like really bland. And
Well, that's what they
simple.
do. They take the spaghetti. So here's what they do. This is a secret nobody knows.
Wow.
They take the spaghetti sauce, right? And then they wash all the utensils with it, and they put that in a can, and they call it pizza sauce, and they charge extra. It's the same thing. So
Paul just came to life. Yeah. He was sleeping through this whole thing, but I talk about sauce.
I didn't know
and
I didn't know what anybody was talking about.
It's like speaking of backnet pizza sauce.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much for geeking us out and talking to us and explaining to us, and we'll see you guys the next time.
Thanks for having us.
All right,
We'll see you.
Bye everyone.
Cheers.